virtual. But yeah.
Okay, take it away whenever you're ready.
Yeah, well, after my phone just told me I'm being recorded, so I'm going to pay attention to what I'm doing. So anyways, you know, I'm an advocate with Homeless Voice to Justice, and Homeless Voice to Justice is a grassroots organization organized by people who have experienced homelessness, and we seek to empower people experiencing homelessness and poverty whose perspective are often excluded from development policies and politics, and we work through protest, education, policy change, and reform. And as part of our annual You Don't Hear Them to Vote campaign, we're interviewing candidates running for local, state, and federal offices on issues that are important to us in our community. And we're talking with you today, who's running for city council. And could you introduce yourself and tell us why you decided to run for city council and what are your top priorities?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me here today. My name is Kate Sykes. I'm running for District 5 City Council in Portland. I'm really excited to be talking to you because my campaign is all about community organizing. I am not a professional politician. I'm a community organizer, and I'm running for office to further that work here in the city of Portland, and to make sure that that the voices of marginalized communities are heard, not just heard, but that they are actually involved in making policy decisions. I think one of the things that's happening in Portland right now is that we've gone away from a system in which people can really feel like they have a voice in crafting policy. So my goal is, when I'm elected, is to dissolve the power of my office into the community, and to really create systems by which people can organize and can have thoughtful conversations across ideological boundaries, and to really understand each other so that we can reach consensus decisions and build solidarity for building the power to enforce demands that we have at City Hall. So it's a power transfer for me. I'm not interested in leading from above. I want to build power from below.
I'm going to let in one of our other Homeless for Justice members. Hi, Mike. Hi, Mike. Can you hear me?
Hi, Anna.
Hi. So you just came, great timing. Kate Sykes just finished answering the first question, and it's me, Kate Sykes, who's running for Portland City Council District 5, and then we have Ben and Jim as well.
Hi, Mike.
Okay. Hi.
And Mike, do you have those questions that I gave to you in front of you? It's okay if you don't, no stress.
I forgot to bring them with me.
Okay, no worries. You're just along for the ride.
Oh, you're not able to tell me questions?
No, you'll hear them. I was just going to see if you could ask some of them, but I'll ask them instead of you. Okay. So currently, Portland is experiencing an unsheltered homelessness crisis. There are many reasons why people don't use city shelters, including criminal trespass orders or restrictions, feeling unsafe at the shelter, feeling disrespected by shelter staff, and more. The city has failed to adequately address these reasons why people choose to or are forced to sleep out. What will you do to address unsheltered homelessness in Portland?
Yeah, that's a great question. It sounds like there are myriad reasons that people are not using shelters. I know that we have a policy that anyone that wants shelter can have it, and that we will provide it. But it sounds like we have an impasse with some policies. Largely, it sounds like maybe law enforcement, and that is actually trickling over into outside spaces as well. So I think one of the things that I'm concerned about is the criminalization of homelessness, making sure that folks that are sleeping out are not harassed, that their property and possessions are not taken, The public commons is for everyone. I know it is not a crime to sleep out. It is a crime to supposedly erect a shelter in a park. But I think that we need to rethink some of those policies, especially when, for instance, in Deering Oaks Park, we have a farmer's market that's there every day that erects plenty of shelters for their purposes to make profits for people. And so I think we need to start having better conversations about what the commons is for, and how we can make everyone feel comfortable. That said, I don't think it's an ideal solution to just tell people that they should sleep outside. And so we do need to find ways to create shelter that is acceptable for everyone and where people feel dignified and safe and healthy in those environments. I was really disappointed to see the county deny use of the Civic Center. That is, although it's not called the Civic Center anymore. I think that was when I was a kid, it was called the Civic Center. I think that, this kind of goes back to the grassroots organizing thing, which is that if we don't first organize at the community level and then organize at the city level to put pressure on higher bodies of government, and by pressure, I mean, we need to make demands that that because of the power building we're doing, they cannot refuse. And so it just really goes right back to grassroots organizing around these issues. And I will say that I think the people most impacted by a problem are the people who should be at the table making the decisions. And so we need to bring homeless people into that discussion. We also need to bring the communities that are impacted by homelessness. I know that there's some of the neighborhood organizations have had vocal complaints about issues of homelessness. We need to get everyone at the table, or we're never going to actually we're not going to see eye to eye on things. So this is all part of community building and having good faith discussions.
Ben, can I pass the next question to you?
Sure. Portland's moving forward with a new centralized homeless shelter and services center in Riverton. Smaller site shelters are a national best practice. Further, COVID-19 has shown us that large congregate settings are impractical and dangerous. Do you believe that Portland should move forward with the Riverton location, or that it should consider changing course to a smaller shelter model?
Yeah, thank you. That's one of my campaign platform issues, that the Riverton shelter is in my district. So that impacts folks in the Riverton neighborhood here. And I've been out into the community talking to people about it. And I think one of the things that I've been really encouraged to see is that I don't see the kind of, NIMBY pushback against a shelter here. I think people are really feeling like we have a homeless crisis that needs to be addressed, and they want to be a part of the solution. Many people were very discouraged by the Nason's Corner shelter that was proposed and the fact that the community rejected that. And it just seems like this thing is being kicked around, to different areas in the city to find some kind of geographical location. Ultimately, I think some of the good stuff that came out of the Nason's Corner organizing was that, we did talk about the issue of single site versus scattered site models. And I think people realize that there is no science behind having a big shelter. I mean, that's a commercial, economical decision that has to do with how cheap and how fast we can do something. I mean, certainly we need a swift solution, but we don't need the fastest, worst solution. So I'm really concerned about that. And I would much rather see us address individual homeless communities' needs through a smaller shelter that addresses, that population needs a certain type of service, and rolling this out into many communities. Also, because I think that when we push homelessness out to the outskirts of the city and we push it out of sight, out of mind, people forget that we still have a homeless problem, right? Like this is a community responsibility. And if we remove it from the eyes of the community, then no one really understands what's going on anymore. And it's easier to have less humane solutions when that happens. When you have unhoused people who are sheltering in your community and you actually see them every day and you talk to them, they're waiting at the bus and you see them at the coffee shop or whatever, like you actually see them as human beings as opposed to a problem. So I support a scattered site, smaller site model. And yeah, and I think that I have a lot of faith in my community that they want that too.
So Jim, you're next.
Yeah, okay. As you're aware, I'm sure all homeless voice for justice advocates have experienced homelessness. Most of my life, I worked as a master electrician. I have my own contracting company. I was able to house myself, but it was because of my struggle with alcoholism that I became homeless. And so recovery issues are very important to me personally. I spent some time at the Serenity House on Mellon Street, which has closed due to lack of funding, and across the board, there's been a reduction of services for people suffering from substance use disorder. And so, do you have any ideas or plans to make recovery services more available to people? Because substance use disorder is a prime homelessness issue. It's not the only issue, but it is an important one.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So the easy answer is defund police, right? And move the money that we would put into social services and recovery services to help people stay in their homes and to address the issues that we're seeing on the streets of Portland right now. I think that I would like to see. I mean, you're talking about alcoholism, but there's other, types of recovery issues as well. We have a major opioid crisis in the state of Maine and in Portland. I have a friend who is in the homeless community, and she was telling me that there are at least 13 overdose deaths in Portland in the last month. That is a statistic that is just, it is mind-blowing and it's completely unacceptable. We need safe injection sites, and we need them now. And the morass of legal issues that we have before us to try to create intervention for this are almost unnavigable. And I know that that's been kicked down the road as a long-term solution, but that's unacceptable. People will die. More and more people will die if we don't do this now. So we need to have safe injection sites that provide a bridge to recovery, that destigmatize addiction, and we need to move more of our social service money away from crime and punishment and towards outreach and building bridges to recovery.
Yeah, I tell you what, I was good friends with Jesse Harvey, the fellow who just died, and during many of my stays at recovery centers, I got to know a lot of people who were struggling with opiate addiction, and I was grateful because alcoholism seemed a lot simpler to me than what they had to deal with.
Yeah, it's all part of the same spectrum, and detoxing from alcohol is one of the most physically dangerous kinds of detox. So they're all really serious.
Right.
So Ben is maybe breaking up a little bit. I don't see any movement on your screen, but maybe you can ask the next question. If it doesn't come through, I'll hop in for you.
When I was homeless, I already had a housing voucher, but due to the lack of affordable housing, I couldn't put my voucher to use. I spent 5 months homeless, which could have been avoided if there was more affordable housing. What will you do to expand affordable housing in our city, preserve affordable units, and prevent voucher discrimination?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, it's funny. As an organizer, I like to say that we don't have a housing crisis in Portland. We have a tenants' rights crisis, and we have an affordability crisis, right? The housing is not in crisis. It's the human beings that need the housing that are in crisis. And so, again, we need to take a human-centered approach to this. And that means that we have to stand up to forces that are using this crisis for private profit and not producing the amount of affordable housing that they could be. Ultimately, I would like to see a federal public housing program, a robust federal public housing program. In many European cities, they do this. And it takes just tremendous grassroots pressure on the federal government to do that, and that's a long ways down the road. But right now, right here in Portland, one thing that we can do is we can restrict Airbnbs. So short-term rentals take up a significant chunk of our long-term rental properties. And so because those are being rented out to tourists, they're not available on the rental market for long-term housing. And that drives up the cost of rental housing because we don't have the housing stock. So if restricting the short-term rentals ballot initiative that's going to be on the ballot in November, if we just do that, we'll pull in at least 2.5% of the affordable housing stock that we have currently in Portland back into the market to be used for the people that live and work here. And that will go a long way towards solving that issue. The other thing is that we need to also implement tenant protections and rent control, rent stabilization. That's another one of the ballot initiatives that we have, and that will also really help to make our housing here, to keep it more affordable for renters, and also to keep people in their homes, because we'll strengthen their ability to continue their leases, right? So it puts that need of tenants first and helps support that. So it stabilizes neighborhoods. And then the other thing is we need to raise the minimum wage. That will bring 2,000 families and children out of poverty immediately, and will go a long way towards making housing more affordable, because there'll simply be more money to pay for rent for a lot of folks.
So both COVID-19 and police brutality have shown us that we need to focus on systemic racism in this country. Black, Indigenous, and people of color are overrepresented in both homelessness and poverty, especially here in Portland. What will you do to dismantle systemic racism within Portland social services? And how will you prioritize the needs of Black, Indigenous, and people of color residents?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's the question of the hour, right? And what we're seeing is that there is this tremendous movement that has drawn our attention to this, and demands have been made on the city. And my feeling is that again, the people who are most impacted by a problem should be the people to come up with the situations. And there were very coherent demands that were brought forward by Black Lives Matter here in Portland and other groups. I think there are a couple of different groups that are working on this. And, I think that we need to listen. We need to listen to them. I was disappointed to see the city convene a whole committee to study systemic racism. I feel like the Black, Indigenous, people of color in Portland have been studying it for quite a long time. And to say that another group needs to study it just feels to me very disrespectful. So for one thing, I would listen. I would listen to Black and brown people. And in that just sounds really vague in general, but practically speaking, I will essentially institute progressive stack as a counselor. If you're someone from a marginalized community, you go to the top of my list. There are certain counselors that speak only with the business community, that speak only with developers and folks that are, working for the 1%. And that's not how I will operate. I actually intend to open this sounds kind of, ridiculous in COVID times, but it won't. And once we kind of get this under control, I'm going to open an office, a community office, to actually do that organizing work and that listening work, so that there's actually like a place on the street that you can go talk to your city councilor. Until that time, I will institute the same kind of outreach through electronic means, through the internet, and also I'll be out there myself talking to people. So yeah, I feel really strongly about this, and look forward to rolling out some of those programs.
Jim, you have the next question.
Yeah, I've been working with homeless rights justice for 20 years, trying to ensure that people directly impacted are involved in the policy making In the past, we've had State House days in Augusta. We had 3 sit-downs with a bunch of homeless people with Governor Paul LePage. Hopefully, sometime in the future, we can have one with Governor Mills. And in the past, when there's been an issue before City Council that has affected the homeless community, we've negotiated with off-street shelter staff, so a person staying at the shelter could come up and testify at City Council and still have their bed available to them when they return. So what are your plans to have impacted people, especially the homeless community, involved in the decision-making process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that, I've been a community activist here in Portland for the last 4 years. I've done my own share of testifying in front of City Hall, and I have to tell you that I don't really see that it moves the needle. And so I actually don't think that City Hall is the place to be making those demands. I think we need to be making them on the street. And I think we need to be making them between communities, right? So getting the neighborhood associations to actually speak with homeless people, getting the organizations that are advocating for homeless people for affordable housing, getting everyone to the table to talk about those things and actually craft legislation is what needs to happen. When legislation has already been put forward to the City Council and we're in a situation of, we're just going to make an amendment, or we do want this to pass, or we don't want this to pass, it's essentially too late. So I take a real sort of classical Greek approach to city politics and the word politics, which has the word city right in it. The idea that a rational, free human being should be able to work with their community to actually create the policies that affect their lives. That's sort of the city-state model of Athens, and I'd like to get back to that model here in Portland, where we really are doing politics at the level of the neighborhood associations. Another thing that I think would be really helpful towards that is to make the district meetings more of instead of I, the counselor, talk to the district. It's more, here's some problems we need to solve. Let's solve them. Let's write the policy right here, and we'll bring this back to City Council. And having homeless voices there for that is really critical. Not just the folks in the suburbs that have the time, that work a 9-to-5 job, that can that have healthcare or have childcare all straightened out. We don't just want those people at the table. We want to be able to make these meetings accessible to everyone.
Thank you.
And Ben, can you ask the last question?
Yeah. If you're elected to City Council, will you work and vote to uphold the City of Portland's long-standing 35-year commitment to provide emergency shelter to every person in our city who needs it?
Absolutely. I will work and vote to protect that and to expand it. And I think also, one of the things that I actually didn't realize, we had a 35-year commitment to sheltering people here. And so I actually went and did a little reading on that when you asked that question. And if I don't know it, there are a lot of people that don't know it. So I will be part of my mission to continue to educate the community about why we've made the decisions we have, and the roots of those values, and why they're just as important, if not more so today. So education is a big part of that, and making sure that I'm doing my duty to talk about what Portland has done right in the past and keep it that way.
Thank you.
Well, those are all of our questions for you. So thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us, and we're excited to share your answers with our community.
Thank you.